Yes.
Okay, great. So before we start, we'll begin with a few little reminders. Welcome to our third Grant Managers Workshop for the Office of Insular Affairs. It's a presentation. It's a presentation from all of our grant managers in the Office of Insular Affairs to support the work that we do with you and that you do with us. Where even though, so I just want to quickly say that we are the purpose of this is to help each other do our work better. So if there's anything that we maybe misstate or there's a question, we can always. This is not an absolute, is what I'm saying. It's meant to be a discussion, a workshop. If something pops up that might not be completely right, this is check back with your grant manager, check back to 2 CFR 200. This is just a discussion. This is not the be all end all. It's just meant to get us going all in the right direction. So just a little bit of a disclaimer before we begin that where things change, we're learning together. If anything that we raise that is not clear, please ask the question. If not today, you can always ask it directly to your grant manager. And if there's a huge discrepancy that maybe I've shared on these programs, make sure to let us know so that we can correct it going forward. So without further ado, just a couple of reminders. And first of all, a shout out to the Virgin Islands. They did a Teams workshop that we were invited to, doing a financial workshop with their component units. And I wondered if either Clarina or Charisse was on the line today and wanted to say a quick word about their meeting that they had.
It looks like we've got Clarina's note taker, but maybe not Clarina herself.
Not in person. Okay. Well, it was a good meeting. I jumped on it. I appreciated the invite. They were having a Teams meeting with all of their different component units and just talking about audits, talking about grants, how to do better better financial management practices and documentation. I thought it was a great workshop, and I wanted to give them that kudos. If any of you have a similar workshop or are doing similar efforts that you would like us, OIA, to be aware of, please let us know, and if we can, we'll jump on. This one is, of course, Virgin Islands is on the same time zone, but it was really great to see their work, and I wanted to highlight that for everybody. The second reminder is our extension of discretionary grants. The deadline was extended to June 8th. Most of you are probably already aware, so you have another week to submit everything to grants.gov. Another reminder that we have is something that we're seeing with our recipients is some problems still with registration. So please, this is a reminder that there are 4 different platforms. They're operated by different federal agencies. They're supposed to work together. They do work together, but you have to have your information in there identical. Emails cannot be different, even slightest numbers, accounting if you're asked for a number. If there's a discrepancy, it will not let us see you in the system. So please, just as a reminder, 4 different platforms, they're connected, we work together, and everything must be identical. So each of your different areas, you need to figure out how to find the best way to make sure that you are you're able to be on there and renewing every year. Does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share about the administrative systems and any tips that might be helpful? Virgil, maybe you have some tips from Guam. I know you do a good job and you don't have a problem with any of this. What is your tip? What is your secret to making sure everything is good for you? I'm sorry I put you on the spot.
Well, no problem. It's communication. So make sure that you're always on Sam. and you get with who is authorized to do the access to make sure they check. We get a lot of marketing emails from different organizations saying, "Oh, you're late on your SAM
Mhm.
um, updates," and usually these are marketing organizations that are requesting to do the work for you. So you got to kind of watch out for those. And besides that, yeah, just got to constantly check because sometimes there's notifications on SAM that says, and especially when you're going on grants.gov and you're trying to apply, there might be a message that says, "Okay, yeah, you need to check with SAM." So just be vigilant with those.
Thank you very much for that. Do you go into each platform regularly, or do you just wait for them to send you an email?
Well, we have a separate person that takes care of our SAM, which is our CFO. So they notify me in case there's any kind of changes, or if there's even um, messages on their emails that notify them of discrepancies. So usually, what we find is a lot of those come from I don't know, third parties, and
Mhm.
we're quickly able to dispatch to understand that those are more marketing efforts to get us to buy into having to sign up with them rather than actual SAM notifications. So it's communications. You got to make sure communications is always within your organization, uh, thoroughly explicit to what who's assigned to who, to make sure when those things do come up, we're able to expedite. So if an expiration on SAM comes up, everyone's notified.
Yes. Thank you for that heads up about marketing platforms. I did not realize that you, as grantees, were getting that. And do you have backup? I know some of our we have problems with folks who somebody leaves or they're not available to do the, logging in. So do you share that information and make sure that you have a backup in case one
Uh,
person is not able to access?
yeah, we have a two-man process or two-person process. So, for example, the records are being kept, and so if one of our, for example, we don't think any of our lead organization leaders like our CFO are ever gonna retire, but if they
Mhm.
do, that information is kept and they keep their records. And if there's a transfer, then of course that has to be transferred to them before they leave. So you basically want to have a operating procedure in case somebody leaves. But we do have a primary and a secondary.
Thank you very much, Virgil. Appreciate
Okay.
your help and your quick jumping in.
Oh, no problem. Glad to help.
Uh, yeah, absolutely. So another reminder that we have is grant reporting and requests for payment. So your reporting is on us most of you are on a 6 month cycle. Every 6 months you report. So just that's it's separate, but it's also connected. So make sure your reporting is kept up to date and on time. You have a financial portion and a performance narrative giving information, what's going on with the grant, what are you doing, new things, old things, things that don't work, things that work, whatever we need to know about the grant. So that's the grant reporting and grant solutions. Keep on top of that. Secondary, just on the side of that, is your requests for payment. So when you send us a request for payment, we will look at your Form 270, look at any receipts, review all of that. But we will also look back to the grant solutions to make sure the reporting is up to date. So the reporting is on every 6 months, depending on your schedule. But the request for payment, you can submit on a regular weeks, every other week, every month, that you can submit as often as you need to. Just submit the request supporting documents, and then make sure your 6 month reporting schedule is up to date. But your request for payment can definitely be more frequent. Just make sure the reporting on the other platform is good and up to snuff. Another reminder that we have is that OIA generally, the policy is that we do reimbursement. There are some exceptions where we will give you an advance. It doesn't happen very often, but I just wanted to give the heads up and the awareness that whether you are requesting a reimbursement, documents must be submitted and then the reimbursement will be paid. If you are asking for an advance, you will submit whatever paperwork you need, like pro forma invoices or whatever you need to make that initial request so that we can review, have enough information to say, yes, okay, we can give them an advance of 10,000 because they're purchasing a big machine that they don't have a big cash flow for. However, please make sure that right away, as soon as you have purchase that equipment or whatever it is that you needed the money for, that you send those receipts in as soon as possible. It should come in as soon as possible, or we'll bump into problems with forgetting, and then we'll bump into further problems down the road with audits. So make sure that those receipts come in ASAP, and then I thought of something else, but it's slipping from my mind. So most common and most secure is the reimbursement. And then it's rare, and we've done it, but it is a little more risky, is the advance payments. We need to help each other to make sure that we're keeping on top of that, or we'll get in trouble. So just keep that in mind. Are there any questions? That's the end of my sort of reminder section. And today I'd like to talk just a little bit in more detail about the grant terms and conditions. When you are given an award, we give you the grant terms and conditions that guide your, has everything in there that you need to know about how to manage the grant properly and what you need to look out for. This is what our grant terms generally looks like. The yellow means that if you receive a grant terms and conditions and it has some yellow in it, it means that there's something missing that we need you to submit right away before you can start. If there is nothing, there's no checklist of missing documentation at the beginning of the grant terms and conditions, then that means generally we have everything we need from you. If you'll notice at the top of the grant terms of the conditions, the one we will send you is the one that we give to everybody who receives a grant from OIA. But you'll notice at the very top of the grant terms and conditions, there is a link, and that is the larger Department of the Interior grant terms and conditions. So it's like a step above us that's also giving guidance, not as specific to your grant, but a larger sort of guidance on terms and conditions for grants. So you'll want to maybe check that out sometime, that link that you'll find at the top of your grant terms and conditions. And maybe Christina can drop the link in the chat. That's just one to just know that it's there and keep it. But if there should not be any discrepancies between the two. Ours will be more specific to you and to OIA. But if anything pops up that you have any questions about, you can always reach out to the grant managers and ask.
So Tanya,
yes,
we do have a question,
okay.
But really quickly, I just want to add just a couple notes real quick. If you have made any changes to your grant, say, for example, you've amended it, you've extended it, maybe you've had money added, there are a few special grants, or, maybe you've gotten a second year of funding. Anytime you make an amendment to the grant and we issue out an actual amended award agreement, the terms and conditions are updated. So if you have a grant that was issued a couple years ago and you've made a change, you might want to double check what those, if there have been any updates to the terms and conditions that you've received. And also, as Tanya's mentioned, our terms and conditions are more specific to your grant and your program that the grant is under, but they are, again, inclusive of the DOI standard terms and conditions, as well as 2 CFR 200. So just because it's not explicitly in this document doesn't mean that it doesn't apply. And so with that, Sana, would you like to come off mute for your question?
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. This is Sana from the RMI. I just had a question regarding grants and terms and grant terms and conditions. So for the RMI, the government Ministry of Finance is the one that does the reportings, and also we also have instances where we would need to submit or provide these to the yeah, I'm referencing our audit at the moment. Sometimes they would request these. Is there any way we can have the full grant award uploaded onto Grant Solution? I already spoke with, I think Tanya is aware of what we're trying to accomplish in this. When we download the NOA from Grant Solution, it's just a two-pager. But would there be a way where we can access these? There can be delays where we would need to request the complete award from the recipient, but it's if there's a way we can have the entire award available on Grant Solution. Thanks.
So
That's
you
a
should,
great question. Yeah, go ahead,
sorry, go ahead,
Christina.
Tanya.
No, go ahead.
So if you have access to grant solutions, you should be able, those terms and conditions should be added immediately to those first two pages of the award agreement. If they are not there, of course, things happen, they can be omitted. You can always check in the grant history, and you should be able to see it there. If all else fails, email your grants manager, and we can make sure you get a copy of the terms and conditions that were issued with your grant.
Thank you. And I would add to that also, Sana, we're coming up to a new cycle of grant terms and conditions. And yes, awards where you'll have a lot of them, right? So I know I don't, I'm not sure if Rebecca is on the call with us, but this is just a suggestion. Maybe you can work with your grant manager so that when all the announcements go out to the Marshall Islands, it goes out in an email, usually to your leadership. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks. And maybe Rebecca would want to say something, but I understand you're having audits, but you need a central spot. So maybe when we send out our notifications, regardless of who is getting the grant in the Marshall Islands, you, Sana, in your office are getting a copy of everything as the sort of the grant managing. You're the one with the overall oversight of the grants. So I know we've discussed. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Tanya, just chiming in. Hi, Sana. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to add, so I'm new to the discretionary funding aspect of or division of our office, but as Tanya said, if there's any question or if there's ever a problem, there's direct dialogue, and we can furnish whatever grant terms and whatever is needed. You can email either of us directly. Tanya is right across the hall, so she's sort of passing on the reins, and I'm figuring out how this all works. But we definitely have the institutional knowledge of the Hawaii team. We have Jen also, I think, is on the call, who is a veteran in TAP issues. So just feel free to reach out if anything happens, if you have any questions.
And I'll put that on my list of, just kind of looking at how we do things when we do our, as Christina mentioned, sometimes maybe we've not attached it to but we can look at that internally a little bit closer. So thanks for raising that. And so one thing that I wanted to caution on missing documents, I would just recommend going forward that when you submit an application for TAP, MAP, Brown Tree Snake, whatever it is, EIC, I would work really hard to make sure that you are submitting everything in the first go. We've been lenient in the past where we're like, oh, well, something's missing, we'll just send you a checklist later. I think probably as we're moving forward in grants administration, just generally, and the way potentially AI may come into it. I think it's better for you as an applicant and a grantee, a potential who wants to get money funding, just to follow the NOFO very carefully and work as hard as you can to make sure that you do not miss anything, that you are not missing anything when you submit. Just the practice will be better for probably for all of us as we go forward and continue to go forward. So this is what our grant terms and conditions generally looks like. You'll recognize it when you see it coming through. And I just listed here on this slide, what's on what each item is. So we have the checklist as mentioned, recipient responsibilities towards the grant, limitations on the use of grant funds. Number 4 is the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. So that's a big deal for our territories, and that you must wait for your authorization to proceed before you continue on your grant, even though you've received, the award announcement. Always wait for that authorization to proceed. It's different with the FAS. Generally speaking, it's not required but I don't want to say that too strongly because there's always an exception somewhere. We will have a NEPA workshop later on to talk more about NEPA. I don't think it's a good idea to completely ignore NEPA. It was put in to help us keep in mind of potential environmental problems. So I think even though for the FAS it's not required, it doesn't hurt to take a look and see if there's any best practices in there that might be helpful for you. And you probably already have your own procedures as well, but I will defer to, of course, the FAS grant managers. When there's any NEPA question, talk to your grant managers on the FAS team. But for the territories, we will work closely with you to make sure that you get that authorization to proceed before you begin. And as I mentioned, we will have a workshop where Army Corps will join us and just kind of do an overview of NEPA 101. And now in the case of NEPA, it's very possible that you may still need to, they will come to you with questions about more documentation that goes a little bit deeper into depth than what we require for the grant itself. So even though you might not have any yellow, if you receive your grant terms and conditions, there's no yellow because you've submitted everything, you may still need to submit further information to the Army Corps team, who will be asking questions and working on getting that authorization to proceed for you. Number 5 is insurance and indemnification. That's just a general, if there's any hazardous activities going on, you as a grantee will want to make sure you have insurance, you have considerations for any activities that may be dangerous, and you'll want to discuss that with your grant manager or have something in play if you don't already have it to protect you from liability. And it would also need to protect us as the grantor from liability as well. Number 6 is marketing and branding. I've talked to some of you about that. The grants, we require that when you take funding that you acknowledge the funder, whether it's in ribbon cutting ceremonies, whether it's a logo on equipment, maybe small sign somewhere on a building if that's the more appropriate way. But take a look at that. We ask that you do marketing and branding. Take a look at whatever the project it is that you are doing. Discuss it with your grant manager, the best way to do that. It depends on the grant and it depends on the program. So just keep that in mind. Scope of work. Yes, following scope of work, whatever the grant that was approved, you have to make sure you're following the scope of the work. Always reach out to your grant manager if there's going to be a change, you anticipate making a change. Christina's point about how grant terms and conditions can change. some of our grants, they go over several years and things can change over time. So definitely look at whatever was issued anew to make sure nothing changed from when you were first issued your grant if you make some changes to it. But as Virgil said, we can apply his policy of communication. That will work very close, very well also with your grant managers. Make sure you're keeping in touch on a regular basis. Grant managers, they're wonderful. I'm new to the team. I know they're a wonderful team, and they'll help you and answer any questions you have. Just let them go on vacation sometimes. And if they're on vacation, somebody else can help them out. And now, in case you didn't know, we're divided out into each area. There's really only one and maybe even less than one person dedicated to an area. So this transition to new grants is still taking a minute. We appreciate your patience as Rebecca mentioned, we're all trying to get a handle on the different types of grant programs and how to manage each of them for all of your respective areas. Continuing on the grant terms and conditions, there's a number 8, there's an item about procurement and following your procurement laws and making sure you're following 2 CFR requirements on procurement. And we like to see when you're doing contracting or different matters related to the grant to keep us posted as well so that we know and can see it's not just us seeing it, but anytime we're audited that we can see that trail. Capital assets, honestly, I'm not so familiar with that one. Christina, do you have any comments on number 9?
So of course, your capital assets, your capital infrastructure grants will have different forms for the grants. Usually for a lot of our discretionary programs, we do have, the 424 A and B specifically for non-construction. For anything that involves construction or planning for it, it's usually a C or the 424 C and D, which have slightly different budget fields for that. Also, there is the SF 429, that is the real property report. That's something that OIA hasn't really implemented as often as it should have over the past, well, really in general, to be honest, we've had a lot of, we're kind of working with our solicitor on that because of the reporting and archiving of that, the requirements for that. But that said, a lot of it is really related to the actual implementation of the projects. Are you on schedule with your permitting? If you are actually conducting construction, where you are making sure you are following that NEPA process, and just keeping on it. Again, there will be specific terms and conditions specific to those grants as necessary.
Thank you, Christina. Does it have any mention in there? My paperwork I took with me away, and then I left it when I ran back to my computer. But on that, the capital assets, is there anything about what to do with property at the end of a grant, or is that not the same issue?
So that's a fun one because if you are familiar with the 2 CFR 200, there are a couple clauses relating to the disposition of property. You should be using any property or equipment that was purchased with federal funds for federal purposes, even if it's not necessarily related to the original scope. Assets should return back to the government or be paid for. With the OIA grants, they are quite a bit different because very often our capital grants, the point of the grant is to create the building or purchase the equipment for the use of the government. So it is, there is a slight difference in the application of CFR 200 because the scopes are very unique. So I kind of just want to leave it there. It is a very grant by grant specific.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Christina. And that actually reminds me again that whatever your grant issue is, you can look through 2 CFR 200, and if you see something that you want to bring to our attention that maybe we don't see, this is really grant management is really sort of an engagement, and you really you are managing, you're communicating over time, over the life of the grant. It's not a one and done. The rule is here and it's done. You do have to keep in touch. Rules change. 2 CFR gets updated. So, and it really depends on the grant. So don't have ever hesitate to ask those questions because that's very normal in the management of a grant. Yes, Virgil.
Just a quick question. A lot of the capital assets that we acquire, we use a lot further down than just the 2 or 3 years because they have a specific purpose. Um, is there anything different that we need to be aware of if if we retire an equipment due to damage or irreparable?
I know Jen has been one of probably the one who's managed your grants most. If Jen is on the line and she has a comment, she can jump in. I would say, just roughly speaking, without knowing the specific equipment, but we're talking aircraft equipment. And, I think one creative thing that you've done, we're not expecting equipment to come back. It's meant to be on the ground. I do appreciate how your organization comes to the call when there's a disaster, when there's an emergency, and you provide support to the local governments and help them out there. But I think the way we've been operating to date is satisfactory for us. But if you wanted to delve into that deeper, reach out to Rebecca, you're it, I think. Oh no, maybe Haley might have you now because you're on Guam. But it depends. It's either Haley or Rebecca.
Okay, I need to clarify that with you later. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to add in real quick, I am not familiar with the specifics regarding the grants that go out to the FAS, so I'm not even going to pretend that I do. But this is for everyone. Just make sure that you are keeping track of your inventory for equipment. It's unfortunately it comes up more often than we would like, especially in terms of audits where we don't know where something is and maybe a piece of equipment has been retired due to age or failure, what have you, and that's not recorded. So again, please keep track of your inventory.
Very good
Yeah,
advice.
that's a big challenge for a lot of organization, asset management.
Yes.
Even when I was with the transportation company or organization before, uh, the entire transportation industry wasn't even equipped to do asset management. So yeah, that's a challenge for some.
hmm Maybe that's a subject we can delve into at another time as well. So thank you for that discussion on capital assets. Are there any questions in the chat so
Nothing so
far?
far.
Okay, great. Number 10, grant fund payment and drawdown requirements. So that will give you a little more on drawdowns and what detail on the drawdowns, which I sort of addressed earlier, just kind of broadly. Number 11, no cost extension, how to submit your requests for an extension on a grant. They are no cost extensions. Number 12 talks about the reporting requirements and gives you whatever the schedule is for your grant. Some of the CARES Act grants were on a 3-month schedule, but generally speaking, for the most part, our grants are on a 6-month cycle, every 6 months.
Sorry, Tanya, can I go back real quick to no cost extension requests?
Please.
So again, this will be outlined in the grant terms and conditions, but there is policy that regarding those requests, there is a minimum amount of information that we do need. Of course, justification for the extension request how long you think you will need further, the amount of money that you expect to remain on the grant at the planned time of closure, as well as a summary of progress to date, which can include the latest reports if it's up to date. But the one thing that I really want to point out is please do not include your extension requests in your reports. You can certainly include it in there, but please follow up with a separate written request, at least via email, to your grant manager to request an extension. That's all. Thank you.
That's perfect. And one thing that I've noticed that I like to see when I'm getting emails from grantees related to that request, putting your no cost extension request in a separate, you can put it for sure in your reporting, but putting it in that email with the tagline, on the subject line, request, no cost extension request is really helpful to the grant managers, and will make sure that they don't. There's so many grants that we're managing different things, and especially in this transitional time, we need you to help us out with that extra special communication. One thing that I like to also make sure of that I do myself, and I would encourage grantees to do, if you're sending us an email about a particular grant, put the grant number right at the top of that email, in the subject, at the beginning of the email, so that when we see it, we know exactly where we need to go, and it doesn't get lost, and it's really easy to see. It's very, very helpful. If I have to open an email and then dig down and then another layer to find which grant I'm referring to, sometimes I just have to put that email down and go to the one, it depends on my work schedule, so these are just little tips to help your grant manager help you more quickly and more efficiently. So we did talk about the reporting requirements, and we will have another workshop where we'll delve a little bit more in detail into those forms. But for today, just knowing that it's on the list of the grant terms and conditions. There's information about grant closeout in your grant terms and conditions. We will also address that in more detail at a later workshop, but there is information there that you can look at for now. And then, of course, the contact information, who your grant manager is, who we know is on the ground working on your team to manage the grants. That's where everybody's contact information is. And then number 15 is just the reminder that we are also subject to that DOI grant terms and conditions I pointed out at the very beginning. So the next topic and the last topic is just the authorization to proceed. On the screen is a sample of what it might look like. It will accompany your grant documents. Some of our grant managers, they just issue it right away. Some might, we'll have to wait until the NEPA process has been completed, and the Army Corps of Engineers, who does our NEPA evaluations and assessments, they will let us know when it's ready, and then we can issue the authorization to proceed. But that's what it looks like. I've blocked out the names of this particular grant, one of my friendly grantees there, but that's generally what the authorization to proceed looks like. And so here's just the list on the next slide. Is just, this is the territories. Every grant undergoes an environmental review. If we know it's just a grant funding for a meeting somewhere or training, then we know that doesn't have an environmental impact. We'll just issue the ATP right away. But wait for that ATP before you proceed. If there is an environmental component, you'll hear from the Army Corps of Engineers. They work closely with us to make sure we address that. We can get sued if we are not taking care of our NEPA requirements and looking at that carefully. So we appreciate your patience and working with us there. Please, number 4, please work closely and provide the answers in as quickly or as timely a manner as you can, because we've had complaints about NEPA taking a minute, and it happens when they're not getting the information. So that's about it with with NEPA, everything else for fast discretionary grants, talk to your grant managers. It's not the same for the FAST as it is for the territories. And that's the end. Any questions?
Question. So, hello?
Yes, go ahead, Virgil.
Oh, okay. So I was just trying to find out what NEPA allows in the FSM in Palau, because you know they run on separate types of programs, and I guess basically I don't know if they apply or not, although we comply ourselves. We don't know what DOI's thoughts are on that.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, my minimal foray into this, and please don't quote me, but my understanding is that NEPA does not apply to the FAS, but that doesn't mean that it can't be inserted into the grant terms and conditions. And it doesn't mean that, for example, USA's any kind of US I'm lacking the terminology because I don't typically work with discretionary grants, but I guess my limited understanding is that it doesn't apply. It's local law that applies.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a workaround there, and that's but I don't want to lend the same flexibility that we would typically do for the compact state. So it's
that's what we've been doing too. I mean, we know that we have to comply to NEPA, but then when it comes to FSM and Palau, they have their own set of rules in regards to environmental.
correct.
So,
and the implementation element is, it's you're bound to local, jurisdiction, like however you apply law within a given country.
Yeah, that's a big challenge right there. So what we try to do is just make sure on our end that we're in compliance as best as we can, and just to follow the local laws, which sometimes can be a challenge because they may not have anything that we have available that would apply to it. And yeah, but what we do also have is with our situation with FAA, we also have to comply with that. So that makes things a little bit easier to follow.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Right. And that's why I mentioned earlier, even if you're working on an FAS grant, it's still okay to kind of maybe take a look. We'll do a NEPA workshop just to get a general sense for best practices. It's because there's also another area, it's the historic preservation section 106, and I'm not fully equipped to discuss it at all even. I'm going to try to contact one of our DOI colleagues who has that expertise. Maybe we'll bring them here to this workshop to discuss it, because I think there are some certain requirements that even though the FAS are independent, there are certain historic preservation, I think, agreements that they collaborate very closely with Department of the Interior's Historic Preservation, the SHPO team in DOI. So if your grant has a historic preservation component, I wouldn't jump too quickly to say, we're in the FAST, so these laws don't apply. So it depends. It depends. So, but we will have a NEPA person coming on the schedule later, and I'll talk to my friend Seth Tinkham, formerly in the DOI SHPO, and see maybe he or maybe the actual SHPO team will come and give us a workshop on that, on section 106. And all of these are good practices, whether something is clearly required by law or not. It's probably a good idea to know best practices so that you can operate in a kind of a good practice kind of a way.
Cool.
Okay, our next meeting next month will be on June 23. It's going to be the third week instead. It's not going to be June 30. There's some travel and some other issues of just scheduling conflicts. So it'll be on Tuesday, June 23. And
Hey, Tanya.
yes.
Sorry, quick, we've got a question in the chat from
Oh, okay.
Rachel. Yahweh from the RMI. This is Rachel. Thank you so much for the great presentation. Apologies as my background is quite loud. I wanted to ask two questions. We are first-time appliers for the MAP grant. It's taking us some time to obtain the unique identifier as we're uploading all the necessary documentation. Is it possible to submit the grant without it while we work on it? I'll go ahead and answer that first because we did actually just get that. Rachel, if you could just please email that request. We do have another applicant who is in the process of obtaining their UEI, and the NOFOs do state that you can apply with prior approval if your UEI is still in process. So if you can please just email, I believe the points of contacts on the notice of funding opportunity are Jonathan Dunn and John Brewer. If you don't see those, their contact information, I'll paste it into the chat and just email that request in, and we should be able to accommodate that. You would need to then submit your application via email, which again, that's part of the prior approval. We don't normally accept applications emailed directly to us. We do prefer them either in grants.gov or Grant Solutions, but if you don't have a UEI, you can't actually apply via either of those means.
Christina, I don't,
yes.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I thought, and as I'm also, this shows how I'm also learning about this. I thought all Marshall Islands grants they go through the Ministry of Finance, so you wouldn't need a UEI because you just use their UEI.
Yeah, Rebecca, I can answer that because that used to be my area. OIA does have a policy where the majority of grants that are issued to organizations within the RMI are actually going to be issued to finance. So have you spoken to finance about applying with their UEI?
Well, so this second part of the question may actually fall into it. Second, eligibility for schools. We are a K through 12 grade private school that does work closely with the government. Does that meet the criteria?
Yes, but if you are applying under the finance UEI, you would have to get approval from them first. So my suggestion is just to speak to them and see if it's okay. They've allowed a lot of other organizations to apply under their UEI, so I don't see why that would be a problem since you do work with them now.
And Miss Sana is on the line with her hand raised. Go ahead, Sana.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that we do have other private schools that apply through the Ministry of Finance for MAP and TAP. We've recently concluded Assumption Schools project where they were doing renovations to their classrooms. So I'll probably work with Rachel on this, but I'm not sure if they're allowed to do. But it's an option for them to go through the Ministry of Finance. We've had and already concluded a project with one of our private schools here on island. Thanks.
I saw another hand up by, oh, Rhonda's on the call. Rhonda, what do you want to say? Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So this is Rhonda Lucas of the Army Corps of Engineers. I was just going to offer, I know there were maybe one or two NEPA questions, or it was mentioned, and as Tanya said, we will do a NEPA presentation later, but I did put in the chat that if you have questions about the kind of things we will ask for NEPA, for this is often for more complex projects that have ground disturbance, we do have a project description checklist. I wasn't able to add it to the chat, but you can seek your OIA grant manager and they can send you a copy of that checklist. It just helps you think ahead of the kind of questions we might ask for NEPA that might be a little different than the questions that you need for your grant. So if you think, especially if you're constructing a new building or there's a lot of ground disturbance, it might be helpful as a grantee to just get that early on and just help thinking about how to address some of those concerns, because it's not just NEPA, it's the other environmental laws like Endangered Species Act or historic preservation. So it's kind of making sure, we are able to check the boxes on all those grants. So just wanted to throw that out there. And so if anyone needs a copy of that, reach out to your grant manager. Over.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you. Was there a somebody else's hand was up, maybe?
I thought there was another hand up, but it seems they've lowered their hand. That says Virgil asks if we can have a workshop on procurement of goods and services.
Sure. Why not? We're on a roll, right? We'll put it in, and we can go into the new next year if we don't run out of topics. We'll keep going, Virgil. but I do appreciate the conversations and hearing from the grantees. I find it very helpful. So thank you for your interest. Thank you for joining us today. We'll have everything posted to our website probably by the end of this week. I think I've shared it before where the link is on the site, on our website. So you can look at past, and we'll post this video up there as well. So just in time to close, any last notes before we go? Again, thank you from my desk. Thank you very much to everybody. All right, no last messages. Take care, everyone.